cataclysm, whether it was natural, like an extinction-level asteroid impact, or global climate catastrophe. In case of prior spacefaring species that had settled the solar system, such an event would only permanently extinguish the species. If there are many cataclysms across the solar system closely spaced in time, a swarm of comets, or interplanetary warfare perhaps, or if the settlements were not completely self-sufficient. Alternatively, an unexpected nearby gamma ray burst or supernova might produce a solar system-wide cataclysm. Clearly, with this kind of research, we're well into the realm of speculation. While it's true we have no way but radar mapping to explore the surface of Venus, humans have extensively explored our own planet and placed a number of rovers on the surface of Mars. For all this, there's not a shred of evidence that advanced civilizations have existed anywhere in the solar system but Earth during the last few millennia. From a purely scientific standpoint, it's reasonable to question whether life may have existed elsewhere in the solar system. And that's from a guy named Eric Berger for Ars Technica. I advise you to check it out, read the article. I think it was a well-written article. I think he has a lot to talk about in here that is worth noting in here about a solar system-wide cataclysm and the possibility of life existing in an advanced state on another planet. Now, I believe this is to be the case. Think of the findings of Zecharia Sitchin's. The discovery of new startling features on Mars that hold intriguing implications for the possibility of life was recently reported by government scientists. This is 2007. It also corroborated an aspect of Zecharia Sitchin's writings that leading an ancient astronaut was buried on that planet. A team of scientists from the U.S. Geological Survey reported at the recent annual Lunar Planetary Science Conference in Houston, Texas. That image taken by NASA's Mars Orbiter spacecraft, Mars Odyssey, shows what appears to be cave entrances where primitive life forms, past or present microbial life, could have been sheltered, and where water could exist in liquid form. More detailed pursuit of the reports reveals the spacecraft actually photographed, in both visual and infrared, puzzling dark circular structures associated with these caves. Structures ranging in size from 100 to 250 meters. That's 330 to 825 feet. Picking up the hardly noticed story since it is June 2007 issue. The prestigious journal Scientific American has now provided additional information, such as football-sized caverns were identified. They are 425 feet deep.
Wow.
They could serve as havens from radiation on the surface, and so would be the most likely areas to harbor life. The journal then adds that the caverns could also accumulate ice, which could support future human exploration by astronauts from Earth. And then the Scientific American argued the report's intriguing aspect by headlining the story Martian Cave Dwellings. Back to the face on Mars. While Scientific America has probably in mind future astronauts, the new discoveries have important implications for the presence of Mars of ancient astronauts, and they have a bearing on the issue of famed and controversial face. In various volumes of Earth Chronicle series, Zecharia Sitchin provides ancient evidence both on texts, clay tablets, and illustrations from cylinder seals showing that Mars served as a way station for the Anunnaki gods in their space travels from Nibiru to Earth. In the Lost Book of Enki from 2004, Zecharia wrote in regard to the face on Mars that it was marked the burial place of an Anunnaki leader named Al-Alu. That great rock, fashioned in the image of his face, wearing an astronaut's helmet, covered in a cave in which the dead Anunnaki leader was laid to rest. The existence on Mars of large caves or caverns topped by rock structures, now revealed by NASA's new discoveries, were thus actually written about first by Zacharias, the Lost Book of Enki, 3 years earlier. So in 2004, what is NASA looking for? The planet Mars is back in the news.
Well, wasn't there something about the gases that were coming up, Pete? Like methane or something that suggested life?
With what?
Because it was the same stuff that was, I can't remember the specifics. It was, let me find an article on it. Something about the methane that they had found was escaping up that told them it was like the building blocks of life, right? Starts with NASA's twin Viking landers, which touched down on different parts of the Red Planet in 1976. to search for signs of life. The Viking science payload included an instrument called a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer, which heated Martian soil and studied the molecules that boiled out. While the Vikings' life hunting experience returned intriguing but ambiguous results, the GCMS found no organics. Instead, the instrument spotted little of note, save for two chlorinated chemicals, chloromethane and dichloromethane,
at maximum capacity.
that were thought to be contaminants from Earth. This was a result for most scientists at the time that Mars is a dead planet. Life, as we know it, is impossible without organic molecules. But then they started finding like almost like geysers of it. You know, the methane was coming up, and then they were saying that was the same thing that was on Earth. It could be a possibility of signs of life. So it's underground, like you're saying. And then there's all the little faces on the planet they always show.
So listen, the Sumerians from Mesopotamia, 6,000 years ago, they didn't claim the achievement of visiting Mars. Of course not. But they wrote on clay tablets about the Anunnaki, who came to Earth from their planet, Nibiru, the 12th member of our solar system, counting as they did the Sun, the Moon, and 10 planets, whose great elliptical orbit around the Sun lasts some 3,600 Earth years. The many ancient texts unearthed by archaeologists that deal with the Anunnaki, their coming and goings, and the astronomical knowledge, among other sciences, they bequeathed to mankind, have been revealed and explained in a series of books beginning with the 12th Planet by Zachariah Sitchin. There's illustrations found on clay tablets or cylinder seals. In texts dealing with the actual space travel between the planets, Earth was designated as the 7th planet, which indeed it is, but only if one counts from the outside in, where Pluto would be the first, Neptune the second, Uranus and Saturn the third and fourth, Jupiter the fifth, Mars the sixth, and Earth the seventh. In those texts, Mars was called the way station, a stopover place between Nibiru and Earth. And amazingly but true, a circular tablet can be seen on display in the British Museum of London. Describes in 8 segments various aspects of space travel between the Anunnaki's planet Nibiru and the 7th planet Earth. One segment in particular, enlarged for clarity here. I'll show you this image.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Let me get it pulled up here.
Now, where did they get this?
Oh, Zachariah Sitchin studied the clay tablets for years.
He studied quite a bit, didn't he?
Geekiness Prime, then there'd be more than meets the eye, obviously. Skies.
This states that the route traveled by Enlil, the Lord and Commander, entailed passage by 7 planets, and also called for a route diversion between the planet Dilgan, and Apin, that's Jupiter and Mars, respectively. So in their text, the Sumerians wrote the Anunnaki traveled to Earth in groups of 50. The first team, under the leadership of Ea, whose home is water, splashed down in the waters of the Persian Gulf, washed ashore, and established Eridu, home of the Faroe. In time, 600 Anunnaki were deployed on Earth, and another 300 operated space shuttlecraft between Earth and Mars. Absolutely Mars. Pictorial evidence for the Earth-Mars connection is provided by a depiction on a cylinder seal now kept in the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, Russia. Here's an image of that. We can take a look at this. Pull this up for you folks. You want to get a look at the cylinder seal. It's pretty good stuff.
Okay.
Ow.
Ouch.
That was my knee.
That's the
Sorry.
plate to make it, right?
That's the plate to make it, yeah. They roll the seal on the plate.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty fucking cool.
And this is supposed to show the transway to Mars, the wave station.
Okay.
This depicts an astronaut, an Eagle Man on Earth, the planet marked by 7 dots, accompanied by the crescent of the moon. So I think we can all see that. And then there's an astronaut on Mars. That 6-pointed star symbol on the right, the latter depicted as one from the Fishmen class of astronauts, those equipped to splash down in waters. Between the two plants is an object is depicted that could only be a spacecraft with extended panels and antenna. So this is to depict the traveling from Earth to Mars by Anunnaki. To maintain over 1,000 years, a space base on Mars required water for survival. The fisherman's attire, the one on Mars, suggests bodies of water on Mars. Moreover, as detailed in the Lost Book of Enki, Lord Earth, a later title for Ea, water was used by the Anunnaki to propel their spacecraft, and the availability of water on Mars made it a suitable way station. The Anunnaki, I've concluded in my book, says Zachariah Sitchins, used Mars not just for a quick stopover. They created a permanent space base on Mars, complete with structures and roads. Genesis revisited and reproduced numerous photographs taken by NASA's Mariner 9 in 1972 and the Viking 1 orbiter in 76 that clearly show a variety of artificial structures there. Some of them were in Cydonia area with its famed face. Not only such ancient evidence, but NASA's own photographs from the 70s onward indicate the presence of water on Mars. A search for watery evidence is thus no great innovation. And, I mean, there's ice caps on Mars, everybody.
Yeah. The water.
And everything that's under the surface.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it would have to be from under the surface, otherwise something catastrophic happened.
Like I'm pretty sure if we ever did deep core samples on the surface of Mars, we'd probably find it like these probably about a few 100 feet. I'd say we'd start getting humidity at least, and then below that probably find actual like extractable water. 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Incoming message.
So, the current search for evidence on water is hinted as an indirect evidence, indirect effort to find evidence of life on Mars. But as in a previous attempt to test Martian soil that was deemed unsuccessful, the current one looks at best for evidence of microbial life. This implements one to ask, why is NASA not sending its rovers to such areas as Cydonia, where its own photographs have showed remains of artificial structures, to ignore for a moment the face? As exciting as the discovery that microbes had been on Mars would be, it isn't the avoidance of closer look at areas with structures and the face, indicative of a desire not to find real life on Mars, the life represented by intelligent beings who fashioned us to look and be like them. For those who launch a space mission, the word extraterrestrial may remain taboo. But the successful landing by NASA of 2 rovers on Mars was an occasion for joy and expectation. Joy because so many of the preceding attempts have failed. An expectation of obtaining confirmation that Mars was once a watery planet. This confirmation was announced by NASA on March 2nd, 2004. NASA spokesman even went as far as stating, where there was water, there could be life. They speak, of course, about bacteria. Commenting on predictions this would happen, I wrote in a letter to the editor of the New York Times on January 18, 2004, that even if NASA succeeds in proving the existence of water in the past, it would only affirm what most people now believe anyway. NASA's own photographs from the 70s and thereafter have shown such evidence. To conclude that bacteria might have existed on Mars, and probably would be indicated by the existence of water, I further wrote my letter, would hardly excite the public. What would be exciting and highly significant for mankind's past and future would be to find evidence of intelligent life, beings like us on Mars. The ancient Sumerians asserted so in their texts inscribed on clay tablets. Mariner photographs from the 70s show possible remains of artificial structures, to leave aside the famed face. To send rovers to find bacterial evidence rather than to verify evidence for intelligent beings on Mars in the Cydonia region is a red herring cover-up. So Zachariah Sitchins was not all about what was going on in NASA, it seems. Did not seem too much. doing it right as far as he was concerned. The letter, not expectedly, was not published. But the question remains, why had NASA persistently avoided on-site examination of the Cydonia? The Genesis revisited back in 1990. Zacharias Sitchin reproduced a series of NASA's own photographs, including photo 035A72, plate E. This captured a panoramic view of Cydonia. Clearly, the camera captured a rock carved that looked like a human face, a male wearing a helmet, and the remains of a walled structure. Two walls forming right angles. This is plate G. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at Cydonia. I think that's great. Cydonia.
It is.
It's cool sounding.
Rolls off the tongue. Here's Cydonia, everybody. Here's an overview of Mars. I always think it's crazy looking at another planet.
I know.
You know, so close. These photographs they're able to. That's Cydonia. This next one. Is probably well better up. And that would be the face on Mars.
The face, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's tiny. I'm sorry.
Frameshift drive charging.
Resident Alien says supposedly a bunch of tablets have been in the possession of the Bilderberg Group and not shared for 100 years. That is not so far-fetched.
That's a transport. I'm telling you.
I seen that movie. It wasn't very good, but I seen that movie.
Yeah.
So, this last image is of walled structures with two walls forming a right angle. So let me pull up that image. Hopefully, it's of a reasonable size here, that we don't have to squint and move so close to the computer. Yeah, okay, this one works for me. This one works. Otherwise, we'll all be squinting and leaning. Do the old squint and lean. So here we go. This is supposed to be evidence of a walled structure with a right angle. Now, I think it is funny if a right angle did occur by itself in nature.
It's not a right angle, though. It's not 90 degrees.
No, it doesn't look like it's necessarily 90 degrees, but it could be. It could be that the picture is not of the best resolution.
But what's the thing on the left of it?
Could be another piece of wall.
That's the thing that doesn't look natural at all.
Like a building.
Could be. Could be. These structures, have been visible to many researchers who make claims regarding their existence. And, with the remote viewing we heard just about earlier from the CIA, I think, that's definitely, it gives one pause to consider the fact that it's very likely there was pre-Adamite life on Mars that came to Earth and settled in Antarctica. This is just, par for the course here. Par for the course. So, while many of writings and lectures, Sitchin's emphasizes structural evidence, but it was the face that captured the image of interest in various individuals. NASA, on its part, ignored all the evidence and subsequent missions, focusing instead on geology. It was only as a result of public outcry that NASA finally directed an orbiter, Mars Pathfinder, to take a look at the face, but only after a dust storm that covered most of the planet, and after fiddling electronically with the photographs to end up with a fuzzy picture. Some of the serious work to uncover the distortions was done by the Meta Research Institute under the leadership of the astronomer Thomas Van Flander. Now, distorted or not, the fact remains the unusual rock is still there, and it clearly shows a human-like face in the 1970s photograph. My conclusions were and still are that intelligent beings akin to us have been on Mars thousands of years ago. The Sumerians knew who they were, the same Anunnaki from Nibiru who had come to Earth and maintained a way station on Mars. My conclusions were, the Sumerian information is provided in text on clay tablets. We looked at them, 45,000 cylinder seat from the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. That one depicted the man on Earth, and man on Mars, and the spaceships going between them. The astronaut, Fishman, Eagleman. It was a discerning fan, Richard L.C. of Manheim, PA, who drew my attention to the similarity between the face and the NASA photograph. Yes, there were several ones, as depicted in Genesis Revealed, and the helmeted face of the astronaut on Mars as depicted on the Sumerian seal, but later has been enlarged for a better comparison. So, this is the face on Mars next to the Martian from the cylinder seal. Let's go ahead and take a look at that, and then we open up the full cylinder seal as well, so we can reference what we saw earlier. So yeah, are we looking at a helmeted man in this picture?
Yeah.
The Martian. This is the Martian that's holding up the six-pointed star.
Right.
Yeah. This is what we're seeing.
I think so. Yeah.
So if we look at
Right.
the bigger picture, the figure on the right is supposed to be the man on Mars. Is it indicative of the face on Mars? And I think there is a lot to say about a possibility there. There is a possibility that that could be a depiction of the face on Mars. A
Well,
possible.
they look pretty similar.
They do definitely look similar. Let's take a look at it again. Sections 22-8. Here we go. The face and the face. Could they be one and the same? Do they depict the same creature? The one is shown full face and the other in profile.
Yeah.
The similarity is nothing short of uncanny. Could the Sumerians have known of the face on Mars 4,500 years ago? The answer is yes. It is detailed in the Lost Book of Enki. It's time to start looking for the real evidence on Mars. Now, NASA has recently released photographs taken from the Mars rover Spirit after it climbed out of the center crater in which it had landed and took panoramic pictures of the crater's top. Photographs captured, according to JPL NASA, are a dust devil in the distance about 2 miles away. As one look closely at these photographs, there are many of them. Ones notice incredible features. What look like long sand-covered walls, a black stone ring, a sand-blown canonical structure, and rectangular areas marked off by stone boundaries. Enlargements of the photos by our webmaster, Eric Poltarak, only enhance the puzzle. An explanation by the rover mission scientists would be most welcome. Read in Genesis Revisited about the ancient settlements on Mars. So we can take a look at some of these Martian pictures here. We can show structures. There we go.
Wow, look at that.
Landing gear deployed.
I'm wondering how big is this?
Successful.
I know.
Engines
That's a good
disengaged.
question.
How big is this? Like, how big
Right.
is what I'm looking at? Like, there's
No
nothing
way.
to give you scale when you're looking
Yeah.
at another planet like this.
No. I don't think I've ever seen this picture. It's interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, then we got pictures taken from the rover here itself. There's that dust devil in the background. Looks ghostly almost.
It does.
I remember seeing enough of those growing up in Vegas. Like,
Could you imagine being like the first astronaut on a barren world like that?
Mm-mm.
That'd be
You
cool.
definitely feel on your own.
Yeah.
It's sort of scary.
I hope my suit don't leak. I hope my suit don't leak.
Right?
I'm gonna die if my suit leaks.
Just every second, if anything goes wrong at any point,
I know.
and you don't have a backup plan for the backup plan's backup plan,
Mm-hmm.
you're screwed.
Yeah.
Yep, because they're all gonna go wrong.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Yeah.
There's something wrong. Alan Sparks points out it looks like a Photoshop blur job. I like that. What's up? Nice blur job, you know? Oh, man. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Remnant says Alan Alford, the author of Gods of the New Millennium, 1997, is one of the world's foremost advocates of interventionism, the theory that mankind was genetically created by flesh and blood gods. A lot of people believe that. I think if you look into the idea of the Great Cosmic War, the Lyran Wars, or the Orion Wars that started with the Lyran War, where the cat people from Lyra were like some of the original humanoids. And, you know, at that point, there were already humans scattered all over the galaxy. So it wasn't anything new. Like Earth was seeded by these other races who came here and colonized because that's what they did. They were an advanced spacefaring civilization, and they got into a million-year war between the Orions and the Reptilians, and that lasted for 1,000,000 years. And the Orions, I think, are basically human beings from another planet, from the Orion constellation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I did a video on that called the Cosmic War, I believe, the Great Cosmic War, or something like that. I made a quick short video on it. It's the last short video I made. It's a topic that I was really fascinated with for a while there. We were talking about it. I was banging on that drum.
Well, it's cool.
You have Space Corp and the Solar Warden Space Fleet. Is that it?
Yeah, Solar Warden Space Fleet. That's right. Geekibus Prime. Could the barren look of Mars be just a hologram? And Mars doesn't actually look barren at all? What if Mars just wants us humans to think the planet is dead? Or you know, what if, God forbid, NASA wants us to think the planet is dead? And it's not. What if it's teeming with life and lush, you know, green forest and animals and shit?
Wait, you mean Marvin the Martian is actually screwing with us and sending us bunk feed? It's probably from inside its fish tank or something, or it's a little tank it has a scorpion or something in. It's like, here, look at some rocks. Dumb humans.
So let me see here, real quick.
Lady Montgomery's in that one, Pete.
Yeah, that's not the one I'm talking about. Well, I'm wrong. I'm incorrect. It's
I'm sorry.
I'll pull it up. Yeah, let me get this here. Words. Boneyard. Let me see the uploads. Oh, here we go.
Orion Wars?
Yep,
I got it, Pete.
I already got it.
Oh, okay.
There we go. We need Orion Wars. So if you want to know more about the Lyran cat people, if that's something you'd be interested in hearing about, then definitely check out the Orion Wars video. It's a very short video I made. I think it's like 4 minutes long. But it really encapsulate the whole cosmic war that happened in the constellation of Orion between the Draconians, the Orions, the Lyrans, you know, these various intergalactic races who vied for control of the solar system for 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000-year war. It was 3 factions, though, but it's explained all the way in the story. There were 3 factions because one breakaway was just sick of them. But it's cool. It's cool. And many people who are channelers and such believe it's channeled information and that it's information that would be the inspiration for a lot of science fiction to come. It would be the true story behind a lot of science fiction.
Frameshift drive charging.
You know. So, I mean, if you're into popular science fiction that talks about these kind of intergalactic wars, you know, you really should read up on the real stuff. It's pretty good. Because these things existed in the solar system and outside in the cosmos long before we were here. Millions of years. So, are you guys familiar with Richard C. Hoagland? He's,
Is it the dinosaur guy?
no.
Oh, who am I thinking of?
I don't know who you're thinking of. Richard C. Hoagland was a pioneer champion of the NASA Viking orbiter satellite photos of the face on Mars as evidence that product of an intelligent civilization. He recently drew public line in the scientific sand regarding the evidence of the presence of current indigenous intelligent life on Mars. And this is by Alfred Lambremont Webery from March 14th of 2010, titled Law of Evidence Support View of Mars Having Indigenous Intelligent Extraterrestrial Life. This is from the Seattle Exopolitics Examiner. And it goes on to say, in March 8th, 2010, email dialogue sponsored by Robert Morningstar, editor of the UFO Digest, on the subject of current Martian life, Mr. Hoagland stated, evidence, show me current evidence of intelligent life on Mars. All we see are ruins, literally thousands of square miles of ruins, and a lot of mud covering them, slowly eroding and blowing away in the wind, which is why we can now see glimpses of what was once buried in a vast planetary catastrophe, which suddenly ended the Martian civilization a long time ago. A new generation of data from Mars supporting the existence of indigenous, intelligent, and animal Martian life has been emerging. From the NASA Mars rovers, which have been on the Martian surface photographing at a close range, and from independent whistleblowers from compartmentalized secret U.S. government Mars programs. Application of the law of witness and documentary evidence may be the methodology leading to the breakthrough in evaluating this new generation of data now emerging regarding the existence of indigenous, intelligent, and animal extraterrestrial life on Mars, our nearest planetary neighbor. This Examiner article explores the application of the law of science to the question of proving the existence of contemporary intelligent life indigenous to Mars. How to evaluate the evidence for indigenous Martian life. Proof of the existence of Martian life. Just as Richard C. Hoagland says, the available evidence proves there's no current indigenous life on Mars, other than the secret U.S. space program, and that's where you want to check out the Solar Moon Space Fleet videos. That works out. It is possible to present proof of an opposite of that association, i.e., there is an intelligent indigenous Martian life currently on Mars. All sides of the conversation about the existence of indigenous Martian life, intelligent life, deserve to be respectfully heard according to the methodology of the law of evidence. One source summarizes the principles of the law of witness evidence as follows. In systems of proof based in English common law tradition, almost all evidence must be sponsored by a witness who is sworn or solemnly affirmed to tell the truth. The bulk of law of evidence regulates the type of evidence that may be sought from witnesses and the manner in which the interrogation of witnesses is conducted during the direct examination or cross-examination. And other types of evidentiary rules that specify the standards of persuasion, reasonable doubt. Tier of facts, such as a jury must apply when it assesses evidence. Then there's documentary evidence. This includes photographic evidence that can be tested according to one source as follows. Evidence of an indirect nature, which implies the existence of the main fact in question, but does not in and of itself prove it. That is, the existence of the main fact is deduced from the indirect or circumstantial evidence by a process of probable reasoning. The introduction of a defendant's fingerprints or DNA sample are examples of circumstantial evidence. The fact that the defendant had motive to commit a crime is circumstantial evidence. It is possible to argue that all evidence is ultimately circumstantial, on the premise that no experience whatsoever can prove a fact. Recall, however, that courts of law deal with what is reasonable, not with ontology. The principal questions of ontology are what can be said to exist, and into what categories, if any, can we exist in things. In the Hoagland Van Flandern fallacy, a term coined by researcher Andrew D. Basaglia, references a fallacy behind the mutual argument of Mr. Hoagland and the deceased astronomer Thomas C. Van Flandern that an intelligent indigenous Martian civilization evidenced by monuments such as the face on Mars at Cydonia does not exist on Mars at present, and the civilization behind the face on Mars died out a very long time ago. Richard C. Hoagland has reportedly called this reporter, Alfred Lambremont Webery, crazy before on George Norrie's Coast to Coast AM for asserting that indigenous, intelligent Martians, more probably than not, currently exist on the surface of Mars and beneath Mars. The evidence for this assertion I cited in my own appearance before the 4.5 million nightly listeners of Coast to Coast AM audience was the documentary evidence of recent NASA Spirit rover photos and witness evidence of independent whistleblower author Arthur Newman and Andrew D. Basaglia, both of whom say they have been to U.S. bases on Mars and met contemporary Martians. George Norrie respectfully allowed me to present the Mars findings on Coast to Coast AM. So there you go. Lucky guy. He got to go on Coast to Coast. Whistleblower evidence, an intelligent Martian civilization. Mr. Andrew D. Basaki, a Cambridge-trained environmentalist and attorney, has publicly confirmed in the 70s, in the company of his late father, an engineer for the Ralph M. Parsons Company, who worked on classified aerospace projects, had met 3 Martian astronauts at the Curtiss Wright Aeronautical Company facility in Woodridge, New Jersey, while the Martians were there on a liaison mission to Earth and meeting with the U.S. Defense Technical personnel. The DARPA Project Pegasus time travel and teleportation and life on Mars. Andrew D. Basagio, witness evidence reveals the fact that by 1968, the U.S. intelligence community may have already been aware of aspects of his later Mars work. He tells of 7 briefings over 40 years in which he was shown evidence of his destiny involving the discovery of indigenous life on Mars, and explains how the emergence of time travel and this epochal future event were interlinked. As a result of the quantum access, Andy was given a copy of his landmark paper, The Discovery of Life on Mars, in 1971, and asked to read and remember it, so that when, in 2008, he wrote it, it would contain as much data about Mars as possible. Corroborating witnesses. Mr. Basagio's training, his witness evidence says, culminated in 1981, when a 19-year-old he teleported to Mars, first by himself after being prepared for the trip by CIA officer Courtney M. Hunt, and then a second time in the company of Hunt. Both trips, Mr. Basagio said, were made via a jump room located at a CIL facility in El Segundo, California. The apparent purpose of the trip to Mars was to familiarize him with Mars, because the CIA knew of his destiny as the discoverer of life on Mars and deemed it important he visit Mars firsthand. His involvement in the U.S. time-space research as a child, as well as Courtney M. Hunt's identity as a CIA officer, have been confirmed by Dr. Jean Marie Agrio, an ethicist who works closely with the U.S. military and intelligence agencies, and by U.S. Army Captain Ernest Garcia, whose storied career in the intelligence includes both serving as a guard on the Dead Sea Scroll expeditions of the Israeli archaeologist Yigal Yadin, and as armed security attaché to DARPA's Project Pegasus. So, we're getting really into this Andrew Basagio thing, and I didn't know if we were going to get to this point tonight, where Andrew Basagio came up and his time travel and his time on Mars as a child. So here we are. That's what, you start going down the rabbit hole and you wind up in these strange places. That's exactly how it goes. Yeah, the Transcendent Cthulhu teleported to Mars. Teleported to Mars. Carries, Mars is worse than any place we nuked on Earth. Nuclear fallout is a holiday compared to the Mars atmosphere. Yeah, I think that's because of Mars' lack of atmosphere. There's nothing there to keep all that radiation out, right? That's what I'm getting,
Probably, yeah. Not.
Oh, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Some people still claim that it has an atmosphere.
There are people who claim it has an atmosphere and life on it, and that it's lush, and there's, trees and vegetation and animals and all kinds of shit.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that make that claim. They're just all. So on July 25th, 2009, at the European Exopolitics Congress in Barcelona, former DoD scientist Alfred Newman publicly stated, "There is life on Mars. There are bases on Mars. I have been there." The following day, Mr. Newman participated in Future Talk, a Project Camelot documentary interview in which he provided details of his teleporting to a base on Mars and participating in a 1-hour project meeting, which was also attended by representatives of an intelligent civilization that lives in cities under the surface of Mars. Arthur Newman has stated that he teleported to Mars in order to participate in a project meeting in which Martian extraterrestrials were present. Mr. Basagio has indicated that the public presentations of the Mars findings, he averages about 75% of the audience who can cognate and see some kind of indigenous Mars humanoid animal structures and statues embedded in the NASA rover photos. At the 2009 Barcelona Science and Spirit Conference presentation by this reporter, 50% of the audience who polled as being able to recognize the indigenous Martian intelligent animal life forms in the documentary evidence contained in the PowerPoint in this article. See video of the presentation by clicking here. Let's see. I can't pull that up. I can't share it. Therefore, one can say, there's no link.
Well,
Therefore, one can say the probable existence of indigenous intelligent Martian life was proven for 50% of the audience at Barcelona. Why not a greater percentage of the audience? Well, there's the matter of the NASA interference with the rover spirit photos. NASA's 7 deadly sins of data distortion. So Mars President Andrew DiBassaggio has cataloged 7 techniques that NASA uses to distort data. Scale. It compresses vertical and horizontal dimensions to make everything look ordinary. Contrast. Set light and dark ratio to extreme value or invert light and dark aspects altogether. Color. Add false hues and unnatural colors. Skew. Move forms out of vertical alignment. Consistency. Paint over to make solid colors look black, white, or opaque. Integrity. Alter natural forms to look like forms that do not occur naturally. And content. Embed content with altered contrast, non-human data, and strange pixels. But this guy here, Alfred Lambermont Webry, he really believes that there is still life on Mars at this moment.
if it is, it's got to be under the surface.
Well, yeah.
That's just so we can't tell.
That'd be my guess.
I wonder if they'd be advanced. I guess they'd have to be a certain level of advanced to retreat under the surface of the planet.
Oh yeah.
The surface would be too harsh.
They'd also need to be able to provide themselves food down there too. So you'd have to have some kind of, I guess, hydroponic growing system going on, which would mean there'd have to be water under the surface.
Hey, need something.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely something down there. They could still be running the Earth Ranch. I guess that's in reference to the Anunnaki. They could still be running the Earth Ranch. Senpai Beats is Martians invented anime. So Sonic 15 says, why hide from Earth? It's not like we'd be able to invade them. They might have a non-interventionist policy. They
We
really
might. We might be their science experiment.
Yeah, we might, but good call.
Carries, what about the Mars Ares of the Greek mythology, the god of war and chaos? Maybe something bad happened to Mars. I think that's really what it comes down to. There was a really advanced, intelligent life on Mars who were in their final stages of like life as a species. And I think some of them escaped to Earth in Antarctica, as I mentioned a couple times already. But nonetheless, the planet was rendered a wasteland. And whoever remained was probably killed
Right.
or died off.
Sad.
So I think it really comes down to, what do you believe? Do you believe there was an ancient Martian civilization? I do. I think there was probably some ancient civilization on Mars. Do I think there's civilization on Mars now? I agree, only underground.
Could be life inside the moon too. That could be a station.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The moon is as a space station.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's something we covered when we did Moon Mysteries. If you're interested in that episode, you can find all the back episodes on BitChute, everybody. Like, it's worth it to scroll through them. So if you go to Creepy Little Book on BitChute, you'll find all the back episodes. Because I delete them off of here after a while. Hello, DJ D. How do you do?
Hey, DJD.
Hello there. That was unexpected.
Hey,
Caught me
DJ.
flying by.
Fantastic.
Indeed.
Indeed.
Apparently the alien sightings and vampire sightings have gone up. We got to calm that down. God dang Martians.
That is true. UFO sightings are up.
Well,
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
They are.
No, there's some really cool shit.
It's a perfect timing to update that breaking news.
Mhm.
I guess, you know, you got a lot more people sitting down staring up at the sky. You probably got that going on. And you got a
Yeah.
lot less air traffic, so stuff's going to stand out.
Yeah, and on the beaches, you know, covering
A lot less
alien
air traffic.
spacecraft. That's all.
A lot less. I've barely heard any planes flying over me.
Yeah, that's a weird part of Florida because there's
Isn't it?
constant. It's a constant. And to like barely hear it maybe once or twice a day is
I know.
so strange.
BJP.
So
I've heard
yeah,
like-
let's
Yeah.
steer hardly back into Mars here, everybody. Hard left back to Mars. The witnessing evidence of Andrew DiBassaggio as to the indigenous intelligent life both on the surface and under the surface of Mars, it seems to me, is highly credible. I've had an opportunity to interview, question, and cross-examine Mr. Bassaggio closely over all the aspects of his account regarding Project Pegasus and Mars since the year 2000. I have found his verbal and written accounts to be consistent and verifiable by available witnesses and documentary evidence, including written versions of his evidence that is made available to me. As an attorney myself, I have found Mr. Bassaggio, who is an attorney and a graduate at Cambridge, to be extremely conscientious in his duty as an officer of the court and a member of the bar of the state of Washington. I have found him to consistently tell the truth, punctitiously, and to be a conscientious reporter of his activities. The professional penalties for an officer of the court in the state of Washington engaging in public deception or fraud regarding an issue of public importance, such as U.S. secret bases on Mars and personal knowledge of indigenous Martian intelligent life, could be high. There are credible, corroborating scientific, academic, and U.S. intelligent witnesses to Mr. Bassaggio's participation in Project Pegasus and of his 2 teleportations to U.S. bases on Mars, where he encountered Martian life forms on the Martian surface. Then there's the witness testimony of Arthur Newman in Barcelona, Spain, between July 25th and 26, 2009. This reporter personally examined DoD scientist Arthur Newman's official U.S. passport credentials as a former U.S. DoD scientist and NSA retirement pamphlets, and questioned him as to the teleportation experience to Mars and his project meeting with the Martian extraterrestrials on Mars. Mr. Newman is an independent whistleblower who made his account of teleporting to Mars and meeting Martian extraterrestrials in a DoD-related project on Mars public at a great personal cost. He's a highly gifted and intelligent scientist, and this reporter's questions of him and his account, I find it reasonable to conclude he's being truthful about his experiences, and the evidence of his account as a genuine experience is reasonable. Mr. Newman and Mr. Bassaggio, to my knowledge, have not yet met, and I have not had personal contact with each other. So that is very interesting right there. Both of them. Teleported to Mars. Teleportation to Mars. And this would only occur if there was a Stargate available to make this jump. Now, they talk about having jump rooms. What makes up these jump rooms? Could it be they have some kind of ancient Stargate technology stored up in places like this?
Sounds like it.
Carrie says, the sky is clear at the moment. You can see satellites crossing without a telescope.
Well,
That's pretty cool.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think ISS was passing over London the other night.
Trebling Levandes, I hope I'm saying that right. Martians look like an anorexic with a balloon head. Yeah, if you look at the image in the thumbnail, Martians do look like an anorexic with a balloon head. They are in bad shape. Well, they're supposed to be very tall, too. They're supposed to be like 8 or 9 feet tall, you know.
Oh, I didn't know they're that tall.
Yeah, they're tall.
Wow.
Yeah, they're pretty big. They're not little pipsqueak things.
No.
We were talking Martians here.
Right?
Yeah. So, let's see. Where do we leave off here? There's more images here. Things purported to be reptiles. You know, possibility that some of these images are animals. They're small.
Oh, darn it.
They're too small. This is a good one. Let's see. Oh wow. Hold up. Hey.
Make sure to mention the Lavian subsector of Mars. That's always fun.
let's take a look at Mars. In panoramic. So this is the surface of Mars here. And, you know, you could say, are those bushes over there? No, they're rocks. Just rocks.
I know I love a good little bush in the morning. It's always fun.
It's off
You
the
always
distance.
did.
Just imagine this drone standing here on this empty, vast planet, just empty. Nothing around. There's nothing happening. Just the wind blowing and shit. The winds of Mars.
You know what? That looks like the Mojave Desert.
Yeah, it totally does, doesn't it?
A lot of
Yeah.
people say that.
Without the vegetation.
Mm.
But it looks like, you know, parts of Red Rock Canyon and stuff like that that are, like,
Yeah.
looks peaceful, to be
Very
honest.
peaceful. It does, Fed.
Terrifyingly peaceful, but peaceful.
Yeah.
Mm.
I don't think I'd want to
Hey,
die.
You know what? If it has to be, you got to do it anyway. I mean, I'd be like, shit. If I get to be the first person to die on Mars, yeah, I can live with that. I'm gonna try and get my ass home, but if you know that's what was meant to happen,
So
I can
be
live
it.
with it. At least I had a fantastic freaking view. Just look at that. Vast emptiness, nothing like pristine landscape before, you know. No, hey, I can already see it now. Roads and gas stations and titty bars and 7-Elevens and all that.
Welcome to the first Martian casino.
Right?
They had one on Futurama.
Right, they did have one on Futurama.
Yeah, they did.
4, 3,
You know, even if you died up there, you're like, like, it's pretty much a guarantee within, you know, 100, 200 years, you know, someone's gonna find your bones, bring you back. And then like, build, you know, put some sort of monument up there, like this brave human being went to Mars and dumbass died.
Now, according to this, some
system
wow,
scan complete.
okay. Bear with me, because I'm going to have to go through a little bit to get to the end here, but it's going to make sense. According to Sheldon Nadell, our first civilization here was etheric intelligence, and were designated to be guardians of the Earth. But this etheric intelligence also needed the help of physical guardians of Earth. There were dinoids from the Bellatrix system in the constellation of Orion, and reptoid colonies from the constellation of Sagittarius that later arrived to inhabit the Earth. The reptoids and dinoids allowed a mammalian species to evolve to sentience. These mammals were called the Precataceans. The Precataceans provided food for all three colonies in exchange for technology, which in turn improved their production rate further. These three civilizations coexisted in harmony, trading among one another for over 8 million years. All three civilizations developed advanced forms of space and time travel. The Precataceans developed their spiritual side, such as psychic abilities, extensively. The Dinoid Reptoid Alliance from Bellatrix, believing they were superior to the Precataceans, claimed to the Earth to cease all cooperation with the Precataceans and wanted to put them under their control over time. Over time, Earth Dinoids and Reptoids became more and more influenced by the Bellatrix Dinoid and Reptoid Alliance. The Precataceans, through their high psychic abilities, began sensing the aggression against them and came to see the threat presented by the Dinoid Reptoid civilizations. Being given permission for Earth's spiritual hierarchies, the Precataceans decided to implode their fusion reactors located in the Laurel Mountain Range. The Precataceans divided into two groups. One group evacuated out of the solar system to the constellations of Pegasus and Cetus, and the other group altered themselves physically so they could enter the oceans and find haven. This group is our now present-day cetaceans, such as dolphins and whales. This entire transformation process occurred over a period of 4 million years. saying, what does it have to do with Mars? We're getting there. When the transformation was complete and the later sector was safe, the first sector imploded the fusion reactors, destroying 98% of the dinoid reptoid civilizations. The survivors evacuated to the planet in our solar system, Maldek. Now, with the dinosaur reptoids no longer present on Earth, the spiritual hierarchies and the Cataceans had to find a substantial guardian for the land. They searched the galaxy for 2 to 3 million years before finding what they were looking for. They found on the fourth planet of the Vega system a primitive aquatic species that was starting to emerge from the oceans. This species had a creation myth, a language, and a hunting and gathering culture. The spiritual hierarchies of the Vega system were then asked if they would permit their species to be vastly altered genetically to accelerate their evolution so they may become a spiritual guardian species. The Vega spiritual hierarchies agreed, so the traces of the first humans came from the Vega star system. Their technology improved very quickly, and once they had developed star travel technology, they started to migrate to nearby star systems for a period of 2.5 million years. During this time, the Galactic Federation was formed. Sirius B was colonized, and Earth was selected for seeding. Later, Mars and Venus were colonized, and the Hyperborean colony was founded on Earth. Dinoids and reptoids, in the meantime, had built up their forces and were invading the various colonies throughout the solar systems. Hyperborea, Earth, Mars, and Venus were victims to these attacks, and the dinoids, reptoids gained control over the solar system for a period of approximately 80,000 years. In response to this, the Galactic Federation planned a counterattack to reintroduce humans into the system. They arranged for a battle planet, 4 times the diameter of Earth, to come into the solar system and destroy the planet Maldek, which was the dinoid reptoid stronghold. The remains of the planet Maldek are now what we can see as the asteroid belt. After the destruction of Maldek and the defeat of the dinoid reptoids, a human colony was again established on Earth in what is today known as Lemuria. Over the next 850,000 years, the Lemurians spread across the face of the planet. They founded daughter colonies such as Atlantis and Yu, which is now in central China, and Tibet and the Libyan Egyptian colonies. The Atlanteans began to acquire a feeling of uniqueness about their culture and wanted to eliminate Lemuria so they could become the mother country. The Atlanteans began forming alliances with renegade Pleiadians and Alpha Centaurians, which had hierarchical systems of government. They accomplished the destruction of Lemuria by taking the Earth's moon. Earth had 2 moons in those times, out of orbit, and by using force fields until it was as close as possible to the Lemurian Empire. Then the moon was destroyed, resulting in a catastrophic shower of meteors. This destroyed much of Lemuria, and this also resulted in many pressures being inflicted upon the tectonic plates, resulting in the gas chambers under Lemuria to implode and sink most of the Lemurian continent. So from this information by Mary Sutherland from the Burlington News website, and according to Sheldon Liddell here is the guy who's saying all this.
System scan complete.
They threw a friggin' moon at them?
Yeah.
That's some straight Thanos level crazy shit. It was like, we are done with you.
Right?
Damn.
That's funny.
And I mean, that would explain, there are some geological events that are kind of interesting, to say the least. Like, there's plausibles but no definites. And that could very easily play into a few.
So this really has some interesting stuff here. I can continue on with the Lemurians and Atlantean civilization, but it doesn't relate to much Mars stuff anymore. So I think I'll just pull up out of that nosedive. Otherwise, I'll be talking about Agartha and Shambhala and after the flood and messages from the Federation of Lemuria. We're not trying to get into all that tonight. Next thing about the 4 will be coming up.
One rabbit hole up to the other.
Yeah, you know, it's just just like a snowball rolling down a hill. This is by Enki, channeled by Estelle Nora Harwitt Amirani. December of 1996. So this is a channeled message, everybody. Put on your bullshit hat. We're going to get a channeled message.
Aha!
You never know, man. That's what most of this shit comes from.
Yep.
Fuel saving complete.
All right. Let me do my alien voice because I'm channeling.
All right.
Mars Earth connection. I'll have to do like this is Corton when he's like, this is Corton.
So stupid.
Discontinue. Discontinue. I recall my first impression when I landed here long ago. I wrote these words in my log. As I stand here surveying the terrain of this new planet named for my son Marduk, there's much work that needs to be done. There's no means of moving water from the seas to the inland areas. Wells are not always plentiful or sufficient enough on their own as a water supply from rain or ice. We couldn't rely on the floods to be consistent. I set to work with my team of engineers to oversee and dig canals and dams more inland from the rivers and seas. There were several pathways, not just one, constructed by which water could be routed away from the volcanic areas to our new cities and areas in which population would be dense. These would be rivers. We had caverns underground which we developed in livable regions, where we can live sheltered from cold nights and dust storms, as well as enclosed cities on the surface of the planet. Mars has been a haven for beings who fought in other star wars in time, and there's been a history of life here, although the place is in need of help. And yet the wars between our family continue, and God knows what will come next. Mars is also a way station that has been in operation for a long time, for travelers in space to make a stopover on their way through the galaxy. Indeed, even our traveling craft planet Nibiru often makes stops there. The way station's name in your Greek language is Phobos, which means fear.
Scan detected.
Phobos is known on Earth as being one of Mars' moons, but it is partially artificial. Beings from other places in the galaxy still stop over to go into Phobos to fill up their tanks, obtain minerals, and other items not normally already available in their home systems. Mars is by no means greatly abundant on its own. Its natural resources were limited, and it depended on imports primarily from Earth to help sustain it. Phobos also allows individuals to take a breather, catch up with one another, and have the opportunity to view Earth from a short distance. Earth provides a great fascination for many beings, as Earth is providing the greatest potential in the growth of consciousness at this time, which will assist all in their own evolution. Oh, here we go. Earth is also one of the most beautiful and abundant planets anywhere, and to view the oceans, the greens, the desert, mountains, clouds all fascinate and infatuate off-Earth beings. In your past, when we were in control of Mars, and the beings we created on Earth were brought here, they were brought to Mars because of my plan to secretly save humanity from Enlil's intention to annihilate them. You know the story as the Great Flood, or the story of Noah and the Ark. Enlil had become furious, disappointed and angry with humanity and the great noise that they made. Enlil made me promise not to interfere with his plan, and with fingers crossed behind my back, I agreed. Marduk had agreed to this plan and went along with me, or so he claimed. The humanoids who believed what I had disclosed to them, learned about an intending disaster, came with us. We airlifted the humanoids on our craft and shipped them off to Mars, where the Ajiji would be in charge. These humans were saved, but there was another agenda. They could be used against the enemy should the situation arise. In his crafty mind, Marduk saw them very similar to how governments today see new citizens, as a potential army and workforce for himself. So he later decided to keep the beings on Mars indefinitely for his own benefit. I don't agree with his reasoning. Yes, we could use them to fend off attacks from Enlil's troops, but I favored a more peaceful and independent existence for these humanoids, where they could hopefully do more of what they wanted to do without Enlil's continuous and nasty interference. Enlil could never accept them as being anything other than his slaves, but at what point I felt overpowered by Marduk. There was nowhere else to run. At that time, Marduk was already a powerful warrior, so reluctantly and a bit cowardly, I gave in. The Great Pyramid in Cairo means Mars, was constructed to be a communication device and the power center for Marduk and I, between Earth and Mars. We still try to maintain control over our region in Egypt. The pyramids, some temples, and the Sphinx were built by us to serve as a reminder for future generations of your extensive past. On Mars, these new Martians felt lost, abandoned, homesick, and betrayed. They felt they were going to be saved by their gods and taken to a better place, even if temporarily, which is what we told them. How would we know? They would be left there to centuries to have to adapt to a strange new planet with beings from all over the galaxies, in a new power struggle with new challenges. How would they know that in time, They would have to fend mostly for themselves because they could no longer rely on the beings that brought them there to continue to help them. Their gods had other things to do, like fighting one another for power and control over lands and people, creating new races, religions, and forcing new ideals. The humanoids missed Earth and their families, their old ways. Their genes still carry the Earth memories and the sadness from this experience. Why am I bringing this up? Recently, it has come to the attention of those on Earth that the Greys, who have been assisting the Martians for some time, have removed some of these Martians from Mars and brought them back to their home planet Earth, because Mars is becoming uninhabitable for them. Another reason for this migration is to bring light to the fact that these beings are related and related to humans on Earth. The Greys are cousins to both humans and Martians. All were created by the Anunnaki, myself, Nin Hersag, Enlil, Ninti, etc. This movement also serves to enlighten humans of their intergalactic heritage and triggers all to delve deeper into your physical and spiritual origins. It begins the universe together again, brings the awareness of oneness of God back into consciousness. Martians currently occupy several regions in and on Earth. Some remain on Mars until they can join the rest on Earth. The Greys perform this feat without Marduk's blessing or consent. The Greys and the Martians are both striving for their own sovereignty, and this includes freedom from Marduk's control over them. On Earth, the Martians hope to survive, blend in, continue to develop as a race with the help from the Greys and humans. But the human component is still risky for them, and they have made any direct contact with humans. They and their children are suffering on Earth, and they feel forced to remain hidden so people can accept them. These Martians are also struggling with the feeling of victimhood and seeing integration and self-empowerment. The message has come out of much of these actions has been translated as the needs for beings to be saved by someone or something else. So it has been said that ET ships will come down to Earth and save select humans, a memory of a past event, or that someone will come who will be superior to everyone and lead the way. The point is no one needs saving from anyone or anything other than ignorance and fear. Are all the gods, all are God. However, most individuals live without a realization of that. All of us are moving towards independence, self-determination, evolution of consciousness, and the physical cellular improvement of the species. Everyone is equal, everyone matters, and everyone has the inner potential that is yet to be actualized. Marduk has gone elsewhere to enlist troops for himself. He still feels his need to win the war, any war. Dracos is one of the system that interests Marduk's. He's now using life forms similar to lizard beings, not as evolved in consciousness as much of Earth is, to assist him in his plan to create more fear on Earth in order to maintain control over his region of space. He's created a new army and a potential plan for himself on Earth. You see, Marduk feels outnumbered and betrayed. Himself, by the other races he felt he controlled, he feels he's losing material power and wealth. This spurs on his fear and justifies hatred and war. He knows the consciousness on Earth is changing, moving towards remembrance of who they really are. Marduk knows very well that Earth is gaining assistance of these groups and others to lift their resonance, so Marduk's influence can no longer be felt, or at the very least complied with. If all beings realize this and regain their self-empowerment, Marduk is doomed to either give up his old tyrannical ways and become part of the greater program, or continue his self-destructive ways in another place, space, or time. But even that is becoming less possible for Marduk. He's in a battle of the polarities with himself. He has yet to make his final decision on what he will do. Marduk doesn't sound like a good guy at all, so...
No.
You know, Marduk's also the name of the patron god of the city of Babylon.
Ah.
You know.
Pete, you had a super chat a little ways back.
System scan
Oh,
complete.
Pudding Tank 2. Thank you, Pudding Tank 2, for $5. Much appreciated. I heard Martian chicks have 3 boobs. I think that's fantastic. You wrote cheeks, but I think you meant chicks. Heard Martian chicks have 3 boobs. I think that's fantastic. Thank you, Pudding Tank 2. Yes, another total recall reference here. We get total recall
Yep.
from
Yep.
Go to Mars.
Great movie. I love that movie.
Yeah, it's a pretty good flick.
Mm-hmm.
Tonight we're talking Mars, everybody, if you're here. Geekimus Prime, that's Marmaduke. I thought Marduk was the dog from the comic strip. That's Marmaduke.
Marmaduke. Yeah.
Marmaduke, yes.
Yes, that's definitely Marmaduke.
Mhm.
Marmaduke.
That's cute.
Good old Marmaduke. Glorbo Gibbons says, did fucking L. Ron Hubbard write this shit?
That's what I was thinking.
No, this isn't L. Ron Hubbard. This was channeled. This is channeled information. Who was this channeled by? I forgot. Let me see what was her name. No, that's not it. It was channeled by Estelle Nora Harwit Amrani. This is Enki, the Anunnaki, channeled through this woman in December of 96. So that's why I said put your bullshit hats on, because it's channeled information. It's always like raising your consciousness with these aliens, you know. It's like the Ashtar Command and Sanat Kumara, Jesus Ananda, all that stuff. It really is. It's all about raising your consciousness all the time. That's what these aliens want.
It's the hope of a better mankind. Or maybe they just need us to raise ourselves to that so that they don't use crime so they can take over our bodies. Bastards.
I would agree with that. We're just being harvested. We're fattened up for the harvest. We're
That's right.
slaughtered.
That's right, Jesse.
Yep.
Fuel scooping.
Trailbling Lavanis? I hope I'm saying that right. Does THC affect you more on Mars?
Possibly.
I don't know. I guess there's no atmosphere there, so you'd have to burn it in the cabin, and the cabin would be pressurized so it was close to Earth, so THC would probably affect you the same.
Yeah.
Fuel scooping complete.
Well, unless you're walking around in your spacesuit and you have a little vape connected up to your air supply.
There you go.
I don't know if NASA's going to hook you up with a vape connection.
Well, fuck NASA. That's why you customize it.
That's right. Do it
I feel
yourself.
like that flat Earth guy who built his own rocket.
No, if I'm on Mars and NASA built my shit, I'm part of that organization. But it'll probably be like Elon Musk or somebody that gets there first. At this rate, a human being.
That's a
Probably.
good possibility.
Might be some private enterprise that gets it there first.
Right?
It's looking that way.
Sons of bitches.
Hey, no, that's cool because that's kind of cool because you don't have a lot of unnecessary regulation in the way.
Hmm.
Not taxpayer funded. It's private industry.
All right, let me get back to this channel information here. Let me see how long this is. I don't want to be reading this lady's channel bullshit all night.
No.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
You know how I feel about channeling. I don't believe in it. This is central control. This is central control.
Alright.
Frameshift drive charging.
You know, in the early years of the 20th century, Percival Lowell and others speculated that Mars was inhabited by an intelligent species much older than our civilization. I just so happen to have his book in front of me.
There you go.
4,
I
3,
think the scene would count the stars. There appeared last autumn to be a newcomer, a very large and ruddy one that rose at sunset through the east, about the eastern horizon. The star was the planet Mars, so conspicuous when in such a position, as often to be taken for reports. Large as he used then, however, he is in truth a secondary planet, traveling around a secondary sun.
scooping.
But his interest for us is out of all proportion to his actual size or his relative importance in the cosmos. For that sun is our own. And that planet is, with the exception of the moon, our next to nearest neighbor in space. Venus alone ever approaching us closer. For him, therefore, all of the heavenly bodies may we expect to first learn something beyond celestial machines, beyond even celestial chemistry, something in answer to the mute query that man instinctively makes as he gazes at the stars, whether there be life in worlds other than his own. Hitherto, the question has received no affirmative reply, although the trend of all latter-day investigation has been to such affirmation. For science has been demonstrating more and more clearly the essential oneness of the universe. Matter proves to be common property. We have learnt that in the very same substance which we were all familiar with on this earth. Iron, magnetism, calcium, and the rest are present in far-off stars that strew the depths of space. nothing new under the sun. Indeed, there is nothing new above it but ever-varying detail. So much for matter. As for mind, beyond the confines of our tiny globe, modesty backed by a probability little short of demonstration forbids the thought that we are the sole thinkers in this great universe. That we are the only minds in space, it takes indeed a very small mind to fancy. Our relative insignificance commonly escapes us. If we reduce the universe to a scale on which we can conceive it, that on Earth which shall be represented by a good-sized pea with a grain of mustard seed, the moon, circling about it at a distance of 7 inches, the sun would be a globe 2 feet in diameter, 220 feet away. Mars, a much smaller pea, would circle around the 2-foot globe 350 feet from its surface. Jupiter, an orange, at the distance of 1/4 of a mile. Saturn, a small orange, at 2/5 of a mile. Uranus and Neptune, good-sized plums, 3/4 of a mile and 1.25 miles away, respectively. The nearest star would lie 230,000 miles off, or about the actual distance of our own moon. And the other stars are corresponding distances beyond that. That is on a scale upon which the moon should be but 7 inches off. The nearest star would still be as far from the moon, from us as the moon is now.
Fuel scooping.
When we think that each of these stars is probably the center of a solar system on a grander scale than our own, we cannot seriously take ourselves to be the only minds in the universe. But improbable as the absence of ultra-terrestrial life is in a general way, up to the present time we have no proof of its particular existence in worlds beyond our own. Whether the observations I am about to describe have revealed something on point, I shall leave for the reader himself to judge, after laying the facts before him. For it is in this view that the present papers would deal with Mars, since any answer on this point is most generally interesting outcoming of the study of the planet. That the observations also disclose the fact that the hitherto accepted period of its rotation proves to be too small by the 100th of a second is a matter of far greater moment. Of course, one which leaves the average man comparatively cool. That Mars, however, should be propelled by intelligent beings, although physically they may be utterly unlike us, more goblins than men or animals, is a suggestion which appeals romantically at least to everybody. To determine whether a planet be an abode of life, 2 questions it must be answered in turn. First, are its physical conditions as such to render it habitable? And secondly, are there any signs of its actual habitation? Unless we can answer the first point satisfactorily, it is futile to seek evidence of the second. So let's see. He talks about the problem with air and water on Mars, and how, there's no indication whether or not that exists. But he talks about the canals as well. Mars is not Earth. Conditions hold there would be necessitate a different state of things, inorganic and organic. Apparently a much more artificial one. If cultivation there be, it must be cultivated on a much more systematic scale, due in large part to a system of irrigation, just as any Martians might be different physically from men. Now, in this point of our investigation, when the broad features of Mars disclose conditions which imply irrigation as their organic colony, we are suddenly confronted by the planet's face with phenomenon so startlingly suggestive that this very thing is to seem an uncanny realization of a deduction. Indeed, so amazingly lifelike is their appearance that had we possessed our present knowledge of the planet's physical condition before, we might almost have predicted what we see as a criterion of the presence of living beings. What confronts us is this. When the great continental areas, the reddish ochre portions of the disk, are attentively examined in sufficient steady air, their desert-like ground is seen to be traversed by a network of fine, straight, dark lines. The lines, from points on the coast of the blue-green regions, commonly well-marked bays, and proceed directly to other equally well-marked points in the middle of the continent. At these later termini, the lines meet, very surprisingly, other lines that have come from different starting points in a similar, definite manner. These state of things exist all over the reddish ochre regions. All the lines, with the exception of a few that are curved in a regular manner, are absolutely straight from one end to the other. There are arcs of great circles taking the shortest distance between their termini. The lines are as fine as they are straight. As a rule, they are of scarcely any perceptible breadth, seeming on average to be less than a Martian degree, or between 20 and 30 miles wide. Some are broad or finer, possibly not above 15 miles across. Their length, not their breadth, renders them visible. For though at such a distance we could not distinguish a dot less than about 30 miles in diameter, we could see a line of much less breadth because of its length. Speaking generally, however, the lines are all from comparable width. So he's talking about the canals
Yeah.
and how there would be need for these canals to move water to the interior of the Martian surface. And he's of the belief that there are vast oceans on Mars in parts of what he can see from his telescope. Now remember, this is in 1900.
Okay.
So this information is pre, space exploration. It's not on the same level as the Great Moon hoax that we've talked about before, because this guy wasn't trying to pull anything over on anybody. This guy deeply believed that there was life on the
Believed
planet.
it, yeah.
You know, and he was one of the first people to propose the theory in modern times. So we talked of canals. Definite shapes of knowledge planet surface detail. The canals we've seen show remarkable attachment to their kind. Not content with such casual meetings as chance to afford them in the course of their long careers, they make a point of rendezvousing as often in a great number as possible. Indeed, the ingenuity with which they manage to combine unswerving rectitude with meeting, by the way, grows more and more marvelous the more one studies it. The meeting places or junctions evidently possess an attraction for the canals. The crossings, in fact, seem to be the end and aim of the whole system. The canals, but means to an end. So much is at once inferable from the great intrinsic improbability that such crossings can be due to chance. So in 1900, this guy's seeing the canals on Mars and deduces that they could not be just accidental.
Right.
That's what he's talking about here.
Slam.
Another insignificant fact to the character of either marketing is manifest association with the In spite of a great number of spots, not one of them stands isolated. There's not a single instance of a spot that is not connected by canal to the rest of the dark areas. The remarkable inability to stand alone shows that the spots in the canals are not unrelated phenomenon, for were there no time tie between them, they must occasionally exist apart. So I think he's under the impression that the canals, when they're in junction together, are places of civilization, where there must assuredly be life going on. Martians inhabiting these worlds. Now, this is his whole book here, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just wanted to give you a couple excerpts from it to give you an idea of what this guy was talking about. Of course, we have War of the Worlds from 1898, H.G. Wells. The Martians are coming. The Martians are coming.
Uh-huh.
There's also a story here from William Ferguson from 1959. William Ferguson is a contactee. This is a short account by an early UFO contactee who wrote a pamphlet called Relax First. It tells us without any trace of irony that he had become adept at the art of relaxation. One day, while relaxing, he has an out-of-body experience during which he takes a trip to Mars and meets its kindly, optimistic inhabitants. Naturally, they have a message for Mr. Ferguson. Welcome to Mars. We have brought you here to verify some information concerning the planet Earth and to acquaint you with an expedition we're planning to make to the planet Earth. This alien's name is Kahunga.
That's a good name.
He's the chief uniphysicist of our solar system.
Sounds like
Events
a cheat.
leading up to this experience back in 1938 on July 9th, when the illumination of my consciousness began to be manifested. Previously to that time, I had written a little book called Relax First, and I had been teaching relaxation. I had become adept at the art of relaxation. It was high noon Central Standard Time, July the 9th, 1938. I was completely relaxed on a studio lounge in my home. My general physical well-being was good. I was mentally serene. I was almost 38 years old. I was born July 23, 1900. I was the father of 5 healthy children. I am writing this 17 years after my experience. I know it was my duty to do so. I have hesitated for 17 years because I did not want to misinform you. Subsequent experiences and events in my life continue to be any shadow of a doubt of what I am about to believe is the most wonderful thing that can happen to a human being. For many years, I sensed that the great experience would be mine if I could get enough courage to be extremely quiet, let something that seemed to be all-powerful control my being. I had been gradually mustering sufficient courage. On July 9th, 1938, I was ready. I was determined that come what may, I would find the answer. Whatever it was that was trying to get control of my being, it never dulled my mental faculties. It seemed and was proven later that the body was something inherent in the body, or the body within my body, and was required for whatever to take place. Something very unusual took place within my being, and I am speaking now of my body, my mind, and my consciousness. There was a tremendousness, a very awesome, very powerful energy that began to surge and pulsate into being. It was continued to increase in tempo and in power. It started in the area of my solar plexus. As this energy and power increased, I had the feeling that every atom of my being was being expanded, taken apart, and raised to tremendous speed. This was something I had never thought or dreamed of, but I decided that come what may, I would still be relaxed. By relaxation, I mean when you can relax the body or be at peace within the body, you can be at peace with your mind, you can be at peace with your soul. Often I laughed about it because at the time I thought right at the moment of the greatest expansion, perhaps this is it. This is something that all of us sooner or later must pass through. The thing that is commonly called death. The thing that I now call transition. After this energy and power had increased to its maximum height, I was carried away at terrific speeds to a distance above and beyond the mundane comprehension. Now as to this energy and power that was working through me, if I had become a part of it, I could see and hear, as well as feel, the most powerful current of life. That was what it was. The very essence of life. Pure intelligent energy. I was part of it. It was part of me. There was no separate consciousness. I was in the consciousness of the whole. I was an infinitesimal part of it. I understood all things. There was no mystery to any part of creation as long as I remained a part of the whole. I knew at that moment I held the key to all knowledge. I had the open sesame of life. If I could return to ordinary existence and tell everyone about this, how wonderful it would be. The most important part I knew I would never forget. This was the knowledge that I would be able to utilize this life energy for removing all imperfections in reality. The consciousness of which I was a part told me. That which I was seeing, hearing, and feeling would remove all manner of imperfections in reality, and was for everyone who could qualify. This has been accompanied in every case with those who did qualify. The qualifications are honest, sincere application of the principles involved. All had taken place in the seventh dimension of creation. A soul had become illuminated. After 2 hours of Earth time in the seventh dimension, I returned to Earth, the third dimension. But I had something added which has never left me. I had the ability to travel, a new kind of travel, interdimensional expanded travel in my fourth dimensional body. So this is amazing.
Sounds like
Yes, it goes on for a while.
experience.
Yeah, he goes on for quite a while about this.
Scan detected.
Let's see. He returned to Earth. His wife was still at work with the ironing in the dining room. I rushed to tell her about the experience, but I found out when I approached her, she didn't see me, neither did she hear me. Then I thought I would go into the living room where an old gentleman I had befriended, who was staying in my home at the time, sat listening to the radio to see if he would recognize me. As I went into the living room, I spoke to him, but there was no response. He couldn't see me nor hear me. Then I began to think, well, this was it. The big moment had come, yet I was feeling wonderful. There were a lot of things I could do and think about and understand that I never could have understood before. So I went back into the room where I'd been relaxing, thinking, as I heard somebody say in the past, that sometimes you might be out of your body. And I looked for my body, but my body isn't there. In other words, my body was right with me. I again placed myself upon the lounge and remained quiet until my being was transformed back into this three-dimensional dense matter projection, and thereupon went into the dining room and told my wife about my experience. The following week, I had a similar experience. I was carried away to the center of creation. In this phase of cosmic consciousness, I was told this is how all things are. Based upon the extremely beautiful size and the physically see. This was my sixth dimension. I was seeing creation in action. Flowing through and impregnating this pure substance and form and color with the rays of pure intellectual energy. As these rays impregnated this passive substance, conception became a fact. Father and mother of creation, a sphere of pure intelligent energy inside a cube of pure universal substance. The rays of life emitting from the father, impregnating the substance of the mother, flowing out into every conceivable element of all creation. That which is the next evolutionary steps of man actually took place with me on July 9th, 1938. Since that time, I had many similar experiences. So this contactee is talking about something that happened to him in 38, and he's talking about it 17 years later. So let me see. Oh, wait. he's talking, this is 1955. So this is after the first war. And that's what he gets to here. The first unusual experience that ever took place in my life and the subsequent experience leads up to the true story I'm about to tell you. The flying saucer phenomenon, which has been around since 1947, is something that most people think everyone has heard about. Most everyone is familiar with the phenomenon, but most people disbelieve it. Most people think that someone is seeing things, even though all these things have been tracked. It seems like people have never context. All this phenomenon is taking place most certainly designates that something unusual is taking place in the atmosphere.
Target shields.
Now, if you remember in January 2047, no one had said anything about flying saucers. There had been no public reports or no articles written, the name flying saucers hadn't ever been heard. It was an event in my life. It was an event in the life of everyone. Something that everyone has been observing since May 1957, which brings forth my experience, which took place in January 2047. I had relaxed in my home. This guy was
Target
relaxed.
destroyed. Under attack.
Let's see. The same preliminaries of this powerful enemy took place. It was the same thing that started the time I was in the auditorium building in September 1940, only this time it was all very smooth. This time I could take it, and away I went in outer space. When these various experiences came to me, I'd always just be waiting, and you might say wondering consciously, where I was going to land. And I would wait for it. At this particular time was when I landed on Mars. I landed in the presence of a great celestial being, whom I know very well now. The great being said to me, "We have brought you to Mars for a definite purpose. We have brought you to Mars to ask you questions concerning the observations we've made of your planet, especially during the last 2,000 years. We want to check your observations with you as an Earthman, one who has lived during the first part of this century. And we also want to tell you things we want you to say to people on your planet. The outstanding part of this situation